Sirius observing in Canis Major and other listener emails on episode 473 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. So we had a couple people renew their Patreon support, Shane, and we were chatting with them. Peter and Tom independently had renewed. So thanks to Peter and Tom. I don't think I see the renewals. I think I just see it when people join. And then I think sometimes if there's a glitch or somebody signs up again, then I will see it. But typically, I think people just renew. But we appreciate it when people do renew and continue to support the show.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks to all of the Patreon supporters out there.
Because this time I had a few expenses on there, which amounted to like several $100s, I think. So, yeah. So it is very, very much appreciated to keep the show going, because when you start adding up those bills, Shane, it's kind of like, ooh, that's a little bit of money. But thanks to people supporting us, then we don't have to worry about covering it all ourselves. We front the money and then kind of pay ourselves back the next time we take the money out. So appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Works well for me. Then nobody's saying, what's this charge for $350?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not free to do it. It's a strange thing. Like, we have to pay for the hosting, have to pay for our provider, have to pay for some of the softwares, all that kind of good stuff. Then the odd time, like a mic breaks or need headphones or something.
Yep.
So I think you did get some observing in, but I'll ask the question. Did you get any observing in?
Yeah, I got in a little bit. I had a telescope out and had some pretty nice views of Mars and Jupiter. Some nice albedo effects on Mars, and Jupiter. I was able to see, the main equatorial bands, some of the polar regions. I was able to see some of the unevenness or jaggedness within the bands, and all four Galilean moons were brightly on display. I was using my little Zeiss telemeter, 63 millimeter, something like a f11 or f12 refractor achromat.
Nice.
And what's kind of interesting is, a little while ago, I was able, or fortunate enough, to acquire the matching Zeiss turret that screws into the back. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it's kind of a neat thing. It holds 4 eyepieces. 3 of them come with sort of friction fit 0.965 inch eyepiece holders, and then the other one is like T2 threaded, so you could put on 1.25 inch eyepiece holder, and then put in any modern eyepiece.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a right angle correct image prism that's in it, which is sort of unique, but it works quite well. So the caveat here, when I bought it, I was well aware that there was kind of a black line on the prism, and it went from kind of top to bottom. And I thought, well, I don't know how much that'll really impact the view. I've looked through like many Newtonians that have scratches on the mirror and you don't see it. And, I've observed with eyepieces that have some visible damage, but when observing, you don't actually notice it. And the turret was a fairly, it was priced appropriately, given that it wasn't a mint prism. And this was the first time I've really had an opportunity to use it. So in the turret, I had a 24 millimeter panoptic, and then an 18 millimeter Pentax ortho, a 12 millimeter Pentax ortho, and a 9 millimeter Pentax ortho. So a nice range. And what I quickly discovered, though, on both Mars and Jupiter, is that black line almost created the same effect as a Behitnov mask. If anybody's ever taken a photo with one of those on their camera, it created diffraction spikes, very abnormal diffraction spikes from any bright object that I put into the field of view. So while I was able to see Mars and see Jupiter and see some detail, this diffraction spike was fairly annoying, and I think it was robbing me of a little bit of contrast. So that night, I decided I'd just pan around and look at some deep sky objects. And if you're looking at things that aren't bright, it's fabulous. It worked really well. You were not able to see any artifacting from this black line. And so like M42 was kind of neat. I looked at some double stars. It wasn't a super long session. It was just nice to be back outside observing again. And I love using that little telescope. It works really well. It's one of the
Hmm.
most contrasty telescopes that I have. But I think I'm going to have to remove that turret. And in fact, I was looking for there's a special adapter. It's an M44 to T2 adapter that you need to convert the telemeter to inch and a quarter. And I can't
Mm.
find that adapter. I don't know where I
Oh
put
no.
it. So I have to turn my house upside down today and see if I can locate it.
Huh. Well, that
Yeah.
sounds like some mixed news on that. I've seen those before on those scopes. I always thought they must work pretty good, but I guess for deep sky only, more or less.
Well, because of that black line, and like the black line is a defect. It's not how they're designed.
Oh, I thought it was part of the because I have a prism that's like that too,
Oh.
very old. It's an Amici, and it's just designed that way. But anyway, it kind of does the same thing, but it's for a finder scope, so it doesn't really
Mhm.
matter. But anyhow, yeah, sounds like Zeiss should be able to have that one sorted out. That's too bad.
Yeah, yeah, it is too bad. And I kind of like the aesthetic of that Zeiss turret. It's,
Mm,
I don't know, sort of sci-fi to me. I think it's neat.
yeah,
Yeah. And then the second time observing was last night. I texted you and Mike that
yeah.
on my
Thanks for
way
that.
home, I was driving and my wife mentioned or asked, she's like, "Is that Aurora up in the sky?" And because I was driving, I didn't really have an opportunity to have a real good look. I knew that the KP index or forecast was moderately high last night. Like we were supposed to hit about a 5, but we were also supposed to be clouded over. So she's like, "I'm not sure if that's aurora or cloud." And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure it's cloud. That was the forecast, but there also is supposed to be aurora tonight. So who knows?"
Mm,
And when we got home and I was pulling into the driveway, I noticed it right away, and it was definitely aurora.
mm,
And from my light polluted driveway and backyard, it was a neat display. I wasn't able to detect any color with my eyes. It was just sort of a grayish aurora, but it was super dynamic. Like it was evolving every
yeah.
second and changing and dancing. And then I took a quick picture with my phone camera, and it captured the color, which was mostly green, but it was like it occupied an enormous part of the sky. Once I
Yeah.
took a photo of it, it was a big aurora.
Yeah, I saw the same. It was huge. I didn't go wandering around too much because it was there's still like a lot of snow and ice here, as I was saying before we recorded. There's about a meter of snow in places, and it's not like snow. It's sort of a little bit soft in places where it's melting, and then like ice in other places, and then there's just sheets of ice in places. So I got my spikes to go walk around, but I was like, I'm not going to go walk around. So I just went out on my deck and kind of looked at it from there. But yeah, it was all over the sky. I mean, my deck faces south, and so I was looking like sort of north and or straight overhead and east and west, and I still could see quite a bit of it. So that's a lot of aurora.
Mhm. Yeah, it was pretty intense. I think if and we did have a little bit of cloud cover too. So had it
Yeah.
been a clear night, I think it would have been a very bright aurora.
Yeah, it was a little bit better than it was. Like it, I hadn't even intended to observe as I said. Originally, I was going to try to observe, but then it was so cloudy. And the other day when it was like that, it even like flurried up a little bit. And I was like, I don't want to get any moisture because it was like totally overcast. And then I guess just after sunset, it must have cleared out a little bit more than forecast and allowed us to see the aurora. And you could see like Jupiter up there and Mars
Mhm.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But here I still have probably another 2 days. Well, maybe another day of maybe today will melt off the rest of the ice on the deck here. It's just like two big tracks of ice that are just a little bit too much to set up around. But I think after today, then should be able to set up on my deck, or even another few days, get up and down from the observatory fairly easily. because I was using it a little bit over the winter, and then I had worn a path in, but then we had a big snowfall or two after I had a path, and see the path kind of is hard packed. But then if you and I don't know exactly where the path is now. And so once you step off that path, you like go up to your knee in snow, right? So
Mm.
it's sort of okay in the day when you can kind of pick carefully, but even in the evening last night, it was still +1 until almost midnight. So I wasn't too up for that, considering I think in the next week or so, by the time we get to new moon, I think we should be dealing with a manageable amount of snow here.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. You don't seem as positive about that as I do, but
Well, yeah, I think the forecast is saying Thursday, Friday, 3 to 4 inches of snow. So I don't know. We'll see how
it'll
it goes.
melt. It'll melt off pretty
Let's
quick.
hope.
So
Let's hope.
yeah, we're
Did you get
still
any observing in?
just that last night, and
Okay.
I've been doing some work most nights during the week, so I just haven't had the opportunity. And then working on the calendar too, making good progress there. So between my regular work and regular job and calendar work, and then sort of some unstable conditions. There was one night I was going to come out here, and then it was calling for fog, and then it did get super foggy. Another night I did come out and it did get foggy, and I was just like, this is just getting frustrating. So anyway, so we'll just have to wait. I think that next new moon, because right now I think just the way the conditions are, where it melts, and then it can get pretty cold, like -10 or -12 at night. Then it's the perfect conditions for making ice fog. So once we get out of this cycle here in the next couple of weeks, I think we'll be much better off.
Hmm.
Hopefully, anyway.
Yep.
We were chatting with Phil from the UK a little bit. He was getting his 90 millimeter Mac on an AZ GTI going. I had listened to a couple of his voicemails, and we had some correspondence. Not sure if you were following that thread, Shane.
Yeah, yeah, it was. He was getting a fair amount of observing in using a Bino viewer with that Mac at times, and he's put together a nice Bino viewer eyepiece set with those
Mm,
Meade 3000 eyepieces. The 3000 series is a series of Plossels, and like many of like the 4000 series and the 3000 series, there's like many, I don't know, sort of versions within that line that changed over time. And with the Meade 3000s, if you get the green lettered ones that are made in Japan, they're quite good, like
mm.
really good. And so he's put together, I think he's got pairs of like I think there's like a 30 or 32 mil, a 16 mil. And I can't remember. I think he's got a third one in there too. So
Mm.
it's just neat to hear him on his Bino viewer journey as well, and he seems to be enjoying it.
Yeah, you had one of those little Mac Sudas. His is the Skywatcher. Did you have one of the Orion 4-inch or something like that at one point?
Uh, I don't know if I had an Orion. I had a Skywatcher 127 millimeter
Okay, yeah.
Mac, and I've owned two of those on two different occasions, and I think both times I was interested in the mount that it came with, and it was
Oh,
kind
I
of a
see.
package deal. And actually the first time I had a 127 millimeter Mac, it was in my observatory for a year or so, maybe
Oh,
even
wow.
longer. Um, any kind of compound telescope is great for an observatory because the form factor is small, like they're not long.
Mm,
But I just ran into issues. You and I have talked about it. My observatory would get quite warm during the day, and
yeah.
then compound telescopes take a longer time to cool. So
Mm,
that telescope would heat up all day and would have a real hard time getting cool enough, especially for a quick observing session. Like if I knew I was observing and I, would open the dome, say around supper time, and give the scope and the dome enough time to cool off, it wasn't bad. But it just, for my situation, it just didn't work very well.
yeah. Yeah. I know even my observatory can get fairly warm. Even yesterday I was up there, it was +4 and it was +15 in there. But I have a heating element. I'm still running the heating element, and I have the big vents blocked off. So I think it would have been significantly cooler, probably at least another 3 or 4 degrees cooler if I had those not blocked off and wasn't running actual heat in there. So, but it's
Hmm.
surprising, like, because it's just a shed meant to cool, and it's surprising how much warmer it is with this small little heating element in there. Really, really surprising.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I'd want to sleep over in there, but I mean, I've been in there when if it was like minus 27, it would be like only minus 13 in there kind of thing. So it's not like necessarily keeping it above zero all the time. But if it's minus 13 out, it'll be like maybe 2 or 3 degrees in there. Pretty surprising. So,
Hmm.
but in the summer, if I'm here, I'll just open a window or the door and I have the vents open, and then any kind of venting more than what I have there now basically keeps it at outside temperature. So not too bad. I think it does need a few more vents, maybe 2 or 3 vents, and I think that would do the trick. But I don't want it to get. I want to be able to keep it warmer than minus 20 all winter. That was here, like, you have to think of so many different things because of the extremes in the cold of the winter. We were down to minus 44, minus 46, I think was the coldest we saw here at the observatory this winter. And then in the summer, I think we saw plus 40 or plus 41 one day. So you sort of have to accommodate both these extremes.
Yeah, for sure.
And Leonid is an observer from Quebec. I was chatting with him a bit on he's going through and revamping his eyepiece collection. He was getting some Pentax XWs. I think he was waiting on the 40 millimeter last time we were chatting, and I think he bought a few of the other ones. So kind of interested to see how his stuff evolves. He's the person who he made a beautiful wooden tripod, really, really nice wooden tripod for his William Optics. I think he has one of the 81 Turismos. Anyway, it's a William Optics of some sort, but this tripod just looks gorgeous. I think he's got a few other pieces of gear inbound too, so kind of keeping up to date on what he's doing. Not going to read that or Phil's, so sometimes, when we start chatting with people, the conversations kind of meander a bit, and I'm like, some of this may not be things people wish to share for one reason or another, which is totally fine. But yeah, it's neat to have all these different individuals from here, there, and everywhere to chat with.
Hmm.
Had this one from Dave V. He wrote in, he says, I was just listening to yours and Shane's latest installment of Actual Astronomy discussing the March calendar. Mentioning asteroid 8 Flora brought to mind a website that I often use for obtaining the exact brightness of asteroids. I thought maybe your listeners would find it helpful as well. Perhaps you and Shane have used the website yourselves. If not, it's the NASA JPL Institute of Technology Horizon Systems web app and then it gives the address. It's pretty self-explanatory. The only helpful tip I would add is to make sure you only use the number in the asteroid identification. Don't include the parentheses. In other words, 8 Flora is not bracket 8 bracket Flora when searching the magnitude, ephemeris, etc. of the asteroid. Going a step further, if you ever need a topic for one of your asteroids, maybe helpful websites would work. I don't recall if you or Shane have ever done an episode on helpful websites. Just an idea. Clear skies. Dave, have
Hmm.
we ever done? I feel like that's impossible.
I think we've done like digital resources or maybe just general resources where we've talked about apps and websites that we enjoy. But I think that's a topic worth revisiting because you and I probably discover some new resources on our own. Plus, like you mentioned earlier, we have a bunch of conversations with a bunch of different listeners,
Mm.
and it's almost monthly, sometimes weekly, where somebody is like this. They're saying, hey, have you seen this website before? And sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't. So, yeah, it's a good idea. We should probably put that on the to-do list for future episodes.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe if people are interested in that, write in with some of your favorite websites that you are using. If everybody sent us a couple, we'd certainly have a ton of them. and then we can maybe learn a few things ourselves. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is kind of topical because it's funny. It seems like we go through a period of time where nobody makes a suggestion for an episode, and then we get a whole pile of different ones from a whole pile of different people. Got to start another file. Then usually what I do is I start a file and then start dumping all that stuff into the file, and then we kind of over a series of months, perhaps this time over a year, now that we're only doing two a month or two a week. Sorry, one a week, down from two a week, then we can get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Clint wrote in, I think this one was just for me, that he wrote that Pancake Day really crept up on him this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, oh, I laughed when I got that. I saw that come in at work and I was in my office just laughing. That was pretty good. Um, Larry sent us in an email. I think there's a question there. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So Larry said, "Hey, Chris and Shane, I enjoy hunting for objects like Venus or a young moon in the daytime. It can be quite a challenge, especially to locate them with the naked eye. I've seen Venus in the daytime a few times in binoculars, but only once with the naked eye and then only briefly. In many of the reports I have read or photographs I have seen, Venus, a young moon, Jupiter, or even bright stars like Sirius were observed around sunset or even well into civil twilight, and it is called a daytime observation. My question is, if an object is observed after sunset or in civil twilight, when there is still some ambient light, does it count as a daytime observation? In order to count, shouldn't an object be observed in full daylight, or at least while the sun is still above the horizon? Of course, I want to encourage anyone who wants to observe objects in the daytime to be very careful. Thank you for your insight on this, from Larry." What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I mean, my thoughts are the same as Larry's, that if it's seen in the daytime, then it has to be daytime, meaning the sun is above the horizon, at least to a certain extent. And if you see it in twilight or nautical twilight, then that's the note on the observation. If it's, fully dark, like typically if I'm talking about my deep sky observations in general, I've waited for it to be completely dark, although I can't like say that the moon was in a such and such a phase or whatever. But in general, yeah, I wouldn't say that I had a daytime observation of the comet Atlas that we were looking at back in October, even though I saw it when the sky was still pretty bright. I would not have said that was a daytime comet. That was an evening comet or a twilight comet, if you would call it. But I would just say it was a great evening comet, best seen after the sun is set. Or only seen after the sun is set. Couldn't see it before the sun had set, to make that perfectly clear. But yeah, Shane, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. Daytime observation should be while or prior to any defined sunset. And, if you're doing it in any kind of twilight or whatever phase, then it's a slightly different observation.
Yeah. And I guess maybe I'm not reading these same sort of observing reports because I can't recall seeing that too much, but there's so much around now where people are kind of giving things their own interpretation. It's sort of like, you hear stories of people going out and, they are going out to look at the comet and they look up and they see the brightest star in the sky or Jupiter or something. Oh, there's the comet. All right, yeah, we saw it. Because I would hear, like, even at work, I would be walking down the hall and hear people talking about, oh, yeah, I went out to look at that comet, heard that in the news, but it was just like this, it just looked like a star to me, and I was like thinking, then you didn't see the comet. Of course, I never say anything. I just keep on strolling. But yeah, you hear all kinds of different interpretations out there of how people see things or interpret them. Certainly, we are never totally right all the time. They're not gonna hold us up to any kind of unlivable standard here. But at the same time, that one seems fairly clear cut to me anyway. Had an email from Richard this morning. He was talking about discovering an N on the moon, which I thought was pretty funny. But anyway, it's like one of those things. It's fun to go out and kind of make your own interpretation of things for sure. But then I think at the same time, I think that maybe people are kind of misinterpreting some things as well. But I want to try to see Richard Zen on the moon one of these days. That'd be cool. Or
Hmm.
nights, or evenings, or in twilight.
Yeah.
Let's see. I had this email from Seth here. So maybe what we'll do, maybe we'll split this one. It's a little bit long. So I'm gonna preface it with this, Shane, is that Seth sent us a this to me when we're doing the podcast. Enjoy all the listener emails, but when we get one like this, like so Seth sat down. What he did is he got a new scope, made up an observing list for the evening, and then went out and did the observations. And that's really cool to get that whole thing in an email.
Hmm.
And what sort of in a weird way, and I was chatting with Seth about this, is it would be nice to get emails from people who are also doing that.
Mm.
And then to kind of collect those together, or to read them on the show, just like this. For example, one of the things that we've done in the past is like a deep dive on a constellation. Hey,
Yep.
and that's kind of what Seth has sent us. And this is really cool because there's many of the same objects in Canis Major that he observed that I too have observed over the years or would observe every year. But then there was like the odd one. I was like, oh, I don't know that I've observed that before, or it's been a while since I observed that. And makes me want to go back and do those observations. So I really like this. This is a nice example of something that we can maybe throw out to other listeners to send us in as well. So with that, Shane, maybe what I'll do is just get you to read the preamble, and then maybe I can read the observations. We can split it up that way.
Okay. So it says, hi, Chris and Shane. First, let me express my appreciation for all you do to further amateur astronomy. I've listened to all of your episodes, and every time there is something new to learn, especially among your wandering musings. Today, I want to tell you about an observing session inspired by what I've learned from you. First, a site where I observed is used by a local astronomy club and is within a state forest just 20 minutes south of town. It is not the darkest site, but the outlines of the constellations can be seen, and it is a field with a good horizon. Lowest naked eye magnitude was probably 4. It beats my suburban Bortle 11 skies. I recently acquired a Stellar View 90 TBV, although I do not do bino viewing. It is mounted on a Stellar View M2 mount with a Nexus digital setting circles. The eyepieces I used for this session were the TeleView 32mm Plossl, which has a 3.3 degree field of view, an 18.2 millimeter TeleView Delight with a 1.8 degree field. The sky was clear and moonless, and transparency and seeing were average per astropheric. I am no artist, but I did crude sketches of the brightest stars and geometric formations to compare with published images to confirm I was seeing the object. The session was a tour around Canis Major, which in the southern U.S. location is reasonably high in the sky. Aludra was altitude plus 23 degrees and was located on this night at the meridian. The route around C Major, Canis Major started with M41 and proceeded southeast to Colander 135, which is in Puppis. Then north up to NGC 2345. The best objects, to my viewing, are noted with an asterisk. So I guess I pass the baton to you, sir.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. So what I've done, and I don't know if we can put these up anywhere, is I've made minor edits. I was gonna do some more editing to this, but sometimes when you sit down with somebody's observations, it's like I don't think I want to make too many edits to what this person wrote because Seth, I thought this was really fantastic. All I did is I just added a couple little tweaks, but then I put in Finder charts for I think most of the objects, Shane.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll definitely make some show notes.
yeah, and that should help people. I'm just kind of making a small adjustment or two here. Well, I got a big I got an image that's too big. But anyway, people can. This isn't meant to be a published sort of thing, but people figure it out. I think if people want to do this, it'll help them out. So Seth says, first up, and he stars M41. I agree. That is a showpiece object there, bright naked eye. He says it's bright pinpoint stars in the Plossl eyepiece, a great place to start. And some say to end on a positive note. The only object viewed with his Plossl eyepiece. Moved on to colander 121. So basically, M41 is, I think, just about 5 degrees, basically straight down or straight south of the brightest star in the nighttime sky, which is Sirius. And the only thing that I might have added here is to try to split Sirius, because Sirius B, I think I mentioned this before in another podcast where I mentioned it somewhere, is like 51 arc seconds away right now or something. So it's a pretty good distance away from Sirius, and people can go in and split it. Have you tried to split Sirius from Sirius B this winter, Shane?
No, I haven't. Just our conditions for observing have been terrible.
Yeah.
Hoping to catch it here, sort of late winter, early spring,
Yeah.
before it disappears.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely try to give it a shot, a 7-inch refractor. I really enjoy observing M41. I've observed it not as recently, but as recently as early winter or late fall. I guess even, yeah, very early winter and late fall. I was making some observations of it. It's one of my favorite open clusters there, being that you can see it with the unaided eye. It's pretty bright. Colander 121, on the other hand, this is a little bit more obscure. It's about another 6 or 7 degrees southeast from M41. So it's basically about 2/3 of the way down to Wesen, which is there's 3 stars at the bottom of Canis Major. And they form a bit of a triangle, or the dog's feet, or however you want to look at them. So there's Sirius, and then if you drew a straight line down and kind of go in the southeasterly direction, you'll see this pattern of 3 stars. And between Sirius and those 3 stars, there's a few other stars that make up Canis Major as far as the pattern goes. But these 3 stars and Sirius combine to make they're the brightest ones, and they really are the ones that catch your eye as far as drawing out this constellation. I think it's probably fair to say, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
So this star here, or this colander 121, is within a 5-degree field of view as Wesen. So people can put Wesen in their binocular field of view to the lower left, and then they'll have colander 121. He describes it as a magnitude 2.6 cluster, 60 arc minutes in diameter, which I think that's a degree. So that's like twice the size of the full moon. So it's a pretty large, somewhat sparse cluster. He goes on to say there were 24 stars distinguishable in a loose structure characterized by 2 bands of stars forming parallel arcs. And then he says that HR 2607 is a 5.4 magnitude yellow star close by. And you can actually, I think, even see that yellow star in the little finder field that I made up there. So that's a nice little tour there, I think, of some fairly bright clusters here that we have going, Shane.
Yeah, it is a really nice region of the sky, and now that it's starting to warm up, it's a great opportunity to get out there and see some of this stuff if you've never done it before. And even if you have, it's like, for me, because of how cold it gets here, I don't look at this stuff all that often because I'm not I'm not observing all that often.
Yeah. And usually what I try to do is go out in the fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Usually,
or just stay up later.
Or get up early or whatever. But this fall, though, wasn't amazing. I only had a handful of nights it really paled in comparison to last year. Last year, I actually think that I probably did as much observing last autumn as I probably have done autumn observing in the past, say, 10 years. Easy, because I think I end up observing, well, dozens and dozens of nights anyway. It just seemed like every time I had a free available night, um, or was working remotely and was just out here at my cabin anyway, then it was clear. I think like every night I was out here, it was clear almost. There was a few cloudy nights, and then I think I missed all but one or two clear nights for like a 4 month period. It just the weather was very good anyway, and then it when it was clear, it just was meshing up with my schedule. It seems so perfect. It seems so perfect. It was sort of hard to believe. Anyway, but this past year, not so much. All right, on to Colander 132, a 3.8 magnitude, large, and he says almost fills the field of view of the 18.2 millimeter Delayed eyepiece. Very loose group of stars forming linear patterns. And you can find this one if you keep going down on that same southeasterly trajectory. I think this one, you'll start to get some of the stars. It will just start to fit into a 5-degree field of view if you're going south-southeast from Wiesen. I think Mike knows how to say this better. All right, Colander 140, and he has highlighted this one as one of the sort of superstars of the night. And I would agree. I've observed Colander 140, perhaps as much as Messier 41 in the past 10 years anyway. And Colander 140 is a visual magnitude 3.5. And I'll say this is my own observation, is that you can see it from my subdivision, or at least the edge of my subdivision out in a field. When the moon is not in the sky and it's a good night and there's no snow on the ground. Like last year, I was able to see it unaided eye. And it's about 60 arc minutes in diameter too. So again, it's very large, being 1 degree. And he said that he couldn't see it naked eye that night. And maybe the conditions just had varied on him a little bit. He says it is called the tuft in the tail of the dog. And he has that in quotes, though he doesn't cite who said it. But I wrote a paper on this. People can look it up if I'm recalling correctly. I believe it was Aristotle who called it the tuft in the tail of the dog. And Seth goes on to write, 6 bright stars create a linear chain, also described as a Y shape that runs through a background of dimmer stars. The brightest in the star chain is 99 arc seconds as a double, and it was described in 1980 as not obviously a cluster. I'm not sure if this one is a cluster or not. And one thing that that Seth didn't mention is that typically M41 is credited with discovery by Aristotle. But I believe that, and like I said, Seth didn't mention this, but from what I'm recalling, is that I believe that a lot of people have mixed up Aristotle's observation of Colander 140 with that of M41, because if you go out and look at them both with your unaided eyes, Aristotle surely would have, then you'll notice that Colander 140 actually very much appears as a comet chain. I'm not sure if you've ever had the opportunity to take a look.
It doesn't stand out in my memory. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, we're saying I'm just looking it up to see if I have see if I can find my, well, people can can maybe just go to if you go to the Harvard abstracts, I think you can find the paper I wrote on it. I'm just not able to find it super quick. This stuff I used to Google up pretty pretty quickly. Just I'll give it another quick Google search here. And I'm going to just say open cluster. And then now let's see. It's just not coming up really quickly for some reason. Yeah, I'm just seeing this now. Getting a lot of references to my observations now. It's sort of one of those good and bad things with doing astronomy this long is then you start Googling stuff. And I used to just be able to Google my name and the object, and then I could find out the little paper I wrote or whatever. But then now I get like, and I can't find the paper because people have referenced it, and I'm just finding the references. But anyway, I think I wrote that about 10 years. Maybe it can't be 10 years ago, but maybe it was the difference between Colander 140 and M41. Well worth going out to see Colander 140. Shane, with your binoculars, you can see it from your yard. I guarantee it. Colander 135 is a second magnitude cluster, 50 arc minutes in diameter. Again, this is almost a degree in diameter. So these are beautiful open clusters. One bright star and three others are arranged in a triangle against a background of fainter stars. Takes up about a third of the field of view in his 90 millimeter refractor. These ones here, yeah, it's just these three bright stars you can kind of see naked eye, and then there's a few other associated stars with them. But from here, Shane, this one is pretty low. You need a really good night to see it. I have seen it from here through a telescope, or maybe it was my binoculars, but from Hawaii, I've sketched it naked eye, but from here, it's pretty tough to see, third magnitude stars and a second magnitude cluster that close to the horizon. NGC 2354 says somehow I missed this one, even though it was on my list for the night. I had seen it on a previous night from in my Lake Pluto driveway, and it just looked like a fuzzy patch, but it is 6.5 magnitude and 18 arc seconds in diameter. He goes on to move a little bit to the northeast, observing NGC 2362, definitely a favorite, listed as 3.8 magnitude and a diameter of 5 arc seconds. This one's quite a bit smaller. It was originally discovered by Giovanni Battista Hodierna. It should be, he said it should be before 1654. I'll just change that because 1654 is when he published his work. And it was rediscovered by Herschel in 1785. It's a concentrated cluster near or with Tau Canis Majoris at its center. The faint stars make it look like a headlight in a fog. It is a very young cluster. So this one here, 2362, and he starred this. This is a star. Shane, have you ever seen this one?
Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
This one is by far one of the best NGC open clusters in the nighttime sky. And when I saw Seth had listed this, I knew I wasn't going to make too many edits to his list, and that he's done some pretty good observing or some research into making lists up. So the first time I saw this one, it wasn't even that long ago. I'm going to say it was about 12 or 13 years ago. And I was observing with Mike about 70 kilometers south of the city, and we're at a little pull-off. And he had this in his 15 by 50 binoculars. And I was just blown away. I can't remember whether I went down to look at it or we talked about looking at it and he put it in, or whether I was looking at it in one of my little scopes, but I just remember looking at it through his 15 by 50 image stabilized binoculars, and he had them up on a tripod, and the view just blew me away. This is such a great little cluster right around Tau Canis Majoris. and you just see it, like he said, looks like headlights in fog. By far, if I go out and observing this region of the sky, I'm going to come back and observe that one. And again, Shane, you should be able to get that one with the 12 by 36s. Perhaps I feel like I've even seen it from my subdivision. So it's pretty bright. It's almost fourth magnitude. And Tau Canis Majoris on a really good night should be able to see it from your driveway even.
Right on.
That's what I like about these objects that Seth has picked is even though he was going to a darker sky location, I think just about everything he listed here you'd be able to see with a good set of binoculars from all but like the worst urban locations kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on to list the other thing he did here, which I really liked as well, is he made some observations of some pairs of clusters like Trumpler 6 and Trumpler 7, which are I think again about maybe six. No, they're about 4 degrees further to the northeast from Tau Canis Majoris, 3 or 4 degrees anyway. So you can kind of go from each of these objects. If you have binoculars with a 5 degree field of view, in my sort of turquoise circle in these finders are all 5 degrees, regardless of the zoom in or zoom out level. It's always 5 degrees. You can go from one to the other, knowing that the next one is going to be just that next field of view down. So it actually makes all this stuff super easy to find. So I really like the way that he did that too. Anyway, Trumpler 6 and 7, these are two small clusters, both about 5 arc seconds in diameter and magnitudes 8 and 10 respectively. Could not be sure I was seeing them because of the rich background of stars, probably too dim for the conditions tonight. So these ones are perhaps a little bit dimmer, but definitely those folks who are using, say, like a 5-inch Max Sudov telescope, like we were talking about earlier from the city, if you had a good finder on it, should be able to pick out 8th and 10th magnitude galaxies pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely 8-inch reflector territory would knock these out even under a pretty urban sky. The next one he lists here, I think out of all the doubles, I've observed this one, HR2764. And the reason why I know this is I was just panning around this, not this autumn, but the autumn before, and I happened just to run across this, and it really is a nice double star with only about a 1 magnitude difference, and they're separated by 27 arc seconds. But I think why it stuck out to me was that when I was going through this with my binoculars, or maybe I was looking at it with my eye, it's like fuzzy either through the naked eye or with binoculars. And then I put the telescope on and I could see it was a double. He says, note, I also looked at Hera, but I was unable to see the faint companion separated by the primary, which is supposed to be 8 arc seconds away. 35 magnification was probably insufficient for the observation. The conditions and differences in brightness between the primary and secondary stars were also limiting factors. Have you made any double star observations or any favorite double stars in this area, Shane?
Like in Canis Major in general?
Yeah.
Or yeah. There's probably the most famous one, maybe next to Sirius, would be what is it? 145 CMA. And it's known as the Winter Alberio, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's known as the Southern Alberio. And it's in the RASC. It's the only star in Canis Major in the RAS, or the only double star in the RASC's double star catalog or list that they have. It's kind of a neat. It's kind of a neat pairing. Herschel saw this, what was it here? January 23rd, 1835, and he noted a large orange star, small pale blue was his notes. 2 years later, he reobserved it and called the colors very high yellow and contrasted blue. Burnham, in his general catalog, notes that the A component was variable And Aitken also notes that while the radial velocity is small, it may be variable. So,
Hmm.
kind of an interesting pair. I think that there was or more surveys done, and I'm just trying to think here. I'm not sure. There was talk that there's a third star, like a C star
Mhm.
here, and I think that that's been proven not to be true. That there might be another star in the field, but it's not associated.
Okay.
And actually, yeah, the two bright components of 145 CMA are completely unrelated. They are an optical double, and I don't believe they're actually a system interacting on each other.
Hmm.
Uh,
Interesting.
and
So where is
they're
it located?
I'm just taking a look here.
CMA, and it's
So
H3945. Is that what it's called?
that's it. Yeah, HJ 3945. It's about 2.5 west northwest of the blue supergiant star O2. I don't know what that is.
I can't find it here. My software needs another number, like
Yeah, WDS. Well, that's a pretty big one. WDS is J07166-2319AB.
yeah. Oh, maybe I'll look it up later. Winter Alberio. Hmm. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, there you go.
Anything else? Any other ones that kind of strike your fancy?
That's the key one. If you have the Cambridge Double Star Atlas, and if you go into the list there, they plot 37 doubles in Canis Major, so there's a lot to
Hmm.
look at.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Spend a night doing that or two.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of these would be pretty challenging, but I think a lot of them would be very attainable.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Seth goes on to talk about NGCs 2383 and 2384, which is another pair of cluster, each about 5 arc seconds in diameter, and magnitudes 8.4 and 7.4, respectively. As for Trumpler 6 and 7, these were hard to distinguish against a bright background of stars. So could be well served looking from a darker location. I have seen these ones as well. They are quite nice. NGC 2360 is a faint patch of stars, about 13 arc seconds in diameter and magnitude 7.2. There's a bright star to the north, maybe HR 2758. This one I don't know that I've observed. Have to go and take a peek at that one. Hmm. And then he also lists, I've definitely seen this one, and he stars it, NGC 2345, which is a magnitude 7.7, 12 arc second cluster. And this is a fair bit, I guess, just over 5 degrees northeast of Sirius. And there's a vertical line of stars approximately two-thirds of the field that cuts through a small cluster of fainter stars. The reason why I know this one is that there's a pretty rich area which is directly north of that, and you use NGC 2345, or at least I have, to start probing this area because at magnitude 7.7, 12 arc seconds, NGC 2345 is pretty easy to see. And then we have the Seagull Nebula, which is IC 2177 north, and Gum 3 is kind of where that complex starts, and Gum 3 is one of the brightest components of that nebula and cluster complex. And so you hop from 2345 up about, I don't know, maybe it's like half a degrees or two-thirds of degrees to the northwest, and then you get to Gum 3, and then you slowly try to trace out the nebula. But there's a couple sets of clusters up in there as well. It's quite a rich region. And then he puts his bonus object in here, which is M93, which is technically not in Canis Major, but it's over in Puppis, which should be like his whole next round because you have the whole M46, M47, and all kinds of great objects over there in Puppis, as is much of the IC2177 Seagull Nebula Complex. Much of that is over in Puppis. So this is sort of a great segue into some other observing. And he mentions that he knows it's not in Puppis, or he knows it's not in Canis Major, but over in Puppis, but it is well positioned, and although low in the sky, nice group of 10 arc-minute diameter stars, and that forms a wedge. So in summary, Seth says, all in all, a productive night. I didn't spend a lot of time on any one object. It was more of an effort to get a general idea of what each one looked like and record major shapes and structures formed in the stars, then check each off the list. This clearly is a great idea to explore with many more clusters than listed here, but I am limited in my viewing to the brightest and those greater than 5 arc-minute in diameter clear sky Seth. So this was a great evening of observing, sort of to share with Seth. I thought, Shane, really great set of objects that he's pointed out for people to take a peek at.
Yeah, great observing report. Sounds like an incredible observing session. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, really, really nice. I'm just going to make a few notes to the notes here, see if I can get a few things to fit in a little bit better, although I don't know how this translates onto the webpage, so maybe this is all for naught. We'll find out. There we go. Kind of playing around with it a little bit just to get stuff on at least the same page, and then I guess people can just copy them and do whatever the heck they want with them anyway. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Anything to add to this show, Shane?
No, that's everything, Chris.
All right. Well, please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, how do they do that, Shane?
Well, if you search for Actual Astronomy on Patreon, you can find us there and commit any amount that you so choose.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. You can also send us your ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.